So I know there's a lot of list ranking videos in the coaster enthusiast community, but this is at least one I haven't seen very often, and it's one I really wanted to do. So why underrated coasters? Well, in my time in the coaster enthusiast community, I found that I have fairly different opinions compared to others. There are probably more coasters I would consider to be overrated than underrated, but I didn't want to make an overrated coasters video because the overall tone of such a video is pretty negative. I'd much rather focus on positive things regarding coasters for this. So without further ado, let's get into what, out of all the coasters I've done, are the 5 most underrated rides, in my opinion.
At number 5 is Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. I rode this coaster about 15 times in one day this past October, and I've got to say, riding one coaster that much really makes you appreciate it. I got a chance to try out a bunch of different music, and it really does enhance the experience. The first drop and the non-inverting loop really are great, and the 2 turnaround helixes are actually pretty intense. My favorite element on the ride, though, is the overbank turn that you take at really high speed past the station. People will complain about the brake runs, and I will say the last one before the final brake run is pretty useless. But on a couple of them, you actually get some cool airtime from going up and then stopping suddenly. The reason this is the lowest on the list is that if you sit any further back than row 3, it is as rough as everyone says. But in the first row, it's actually quite smooth. At number 4 is Wildcat at Hershey Park. This coaster was actually in my top 10 after I rode it in 2012, and I'd even find out it was so hated until later when I became a bit more involved in the enthusiast community online. The thing I remember the most about this coaster is how insane the first drop was. It's incredibly steeply banked. I have no idea how this coaster ran with PTC trains with the kind of track profiling it has. The rest of the ride was rough, sure, but it was a good rough. It was fast, crazy, and out of control, and I loved it. It's way more intense than Lightning Racer, just next door. Also, that brake run is music to my ears. Here. At number 3 is Superman Escape from Krypton. I know what you're thinking. How is Superman Escape from Krypton underrated? I mean, it is in Sean Sandbrook's top 10 after all.
Theme Over Water YouTube, check it out!
But yeah, I do think this ride is underrated. Personally, for me, it's just outside top 10, actually. I think a lot of the huge launch coasters like Superman, Dragster, and King Ka get a bad reputation in general. And yeah, this coaster's like 15 seconds long. But what a 15 seconds it is! The launch literally took my breath away, as in I couldn't breathe for a second. And slowing to a crawl as you approach the top, it's really good hang time. This coaster is literally the definition of short but sweet. At number 2 is Alpengeist. This is my favorite invert. I haven't ridden some of the inverts out there, but as of now, this is the best I've done. For one, this coaster is huge. The first few elements are massive and they're powerful. This is not a rough coaster like many say. It's pretty intense, sure, but that's what I love about it. Not to mention that, like every other coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, its location is fantastic. The only part of the ride I don't like is the Cobra Roll, but I'm not a big fan of Cobra Rolls in general, so. The last thing about Alpengeist I want to mention is the finale, where you dive into the trees after being 100 feet above them for most of the ride. The last few turns are so close to the ground, it's pretty terrifying. You think you're going to hit your feet on the ground, and yeah. And the number 1 most underrated coaster, in my opinion, is Medusa at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. This coaster is in my top 10, and it's my second favorite B&M after Fury 325. Why? I have no idea. I just love this coaster a lot. I said before that I don't like Cobra Rolls. Well, this has a Sea Serpent instead. And on top of that, the rest of the inversions are great too. The ride is buttery smooth, and it's one of the more intense B&Ms as well. I know this isn't the most traditional sort of underrated, but it's like this. The rest of the coasters on this list are coasters a lot of people consider to be bad or mediocre that I consider to be decent or pretty good. Medusa is a coaster most people consider good that I consider to be fantastic. I think that still fits the definition. Well, that's about it for this video, I suppose. Thanks for watching. I'll probably be making more roller coaster related content in the future, so stay tuned for that if you want. Goodbye.